Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Given the allocated time to showcase Peru, I will jump right into it. The presentation will be in English, mais je serai ravie de répondre à vos questions en français. A side note first, in terms of Bolivia, given a recent elected government, together with the effects of the pandemic, I will omit presenting on mining in Bolivia, but happy to discuss should you wish to explore opportunities. So delving right into mining in Peru. Canada and Peru have a history of strong and growing bilateral relations. We're coming on 2 years since Canada and Peru celebrated 75 years of bilateral relations and marked our 10 years anniversary with the Canada-Peru Free Trade Agreement. The existing FTA, which entered into force in August of 2009, provides preferential market access and clear trading rules for Canadian exporters. Peru is Canada's third largest trading partner in South America after Brazil and Chile. In 2019, GDP grew by 2.3% compared to the 3.5% projected. Unfortunately, GDP decreased by 13.9% in 2020, essentially due to the pandemic, but it is expected to increase by 7.3% in 2021. At the end of 2020, Canadian direct investment abroad in Peru stood at $14.6 billion, 11 of which are concentrated in the extractive sector. Also, Canada and Peru are partners in the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, hopefully soon to be ratified, and also carrying on trade negotiations with the Pacific Alliance. 2020 was a dire year for production in Peru, to say the least, but an anomaly, which is why I will resort to former ranking pre-pandemic. Peru is the world's second largest producer of copper, silver, and zinc, as well as Latin America's largest producer of gold, zinc, lead, boron, indium, and selenium. While Chile is the world's leading copper producer by far, Peru is in second place. In 2019, national copper production reached 2.5 million TMFs. Scotiabank predicts that with Toromocho expansion and Mina Justa ramping this year, we will see production resume and grow. Geological potential aside, one of Peru's competitive advantage is that it is more resilient to volatility of commodities market since it's a polymetallic country. Peru had expected that the sector would grow 3.6% in 2020, which unfortunately was impacted by the pandemic. On the contrary, it contracted worse than in 2019, which had contracted 1.6%. Notwithstanding the economic standstill in Peru at the outset of the pandemic and responsible for probably the worst recession in Latin America, the Lima Stock Exchange, together with the Central Bank of Peru, underscore that mining is still the most important sector fueling and contributing to Peru's stable growth and is now more than ever a key contributor to the recovery of Peru's post-pandemic. During the last decade, 16% of private investments were directed towards mining, and it is the biggest generator of revenues. Mining remains an important economic generator in Peru at both the national and subnational levels. Mining typically represents between 10 to 14% of GDP, and mining exports represent between 50 to 60% of total exports. Broken down, 60% metallic and 1.1 non-metallic for 2020. Of which copper, gold, zinc, and lead represent 55.5% of the revenues of total exports and 90.8% of mining export revenues. Mining investments were finally up strongly in December of 2020, reaching $664 million. It was the best month for the year. Total annual investments was $4.3 billion, down from 29.6% in 2019, for the most part due to the pandemic and complete shutdown of the economy. In 2020, despite a fall in mining investments in Peru registered in the following categories in order of spending: processing plant equipment, be it crushers, smelters, etc., mining equipment, fleets, mining camps, offices, shafts if underground, infrastructure, big infrastructure such as building the tailing ponds, full building of mine, development and preparation, clearing of the land, preparation of the terrain, and exploration, drilling equipment, and geophysics. Turning our attention to exploration, the portfolio consists of 64 projects, the majority of which are in the south of Peru, primarily in gold and copper, 60% of which are awaiting approval of exploration permits. And according to the Ministry of Energy and Mines, Canada is the #1 investor out of 11 countries in terms of exploration investments, and that's approximately 23% of exploration portfolio. Exploration investments have been struggling in the last several years, and some would say systematically decreasing, at $413 million in 2018, then at 356 million, the lowest in a decade in 2019. And it was projected at 421 for 2020, but was far from that at 173 million as of October of 2020, given the pandemic. Forecasts of the 2021 64 projects are registered at 498 million, perhaps a little bit too optimistic, but Peru needs more greenfield projects to renew its portfolio. In terms of Peru's mining portfolio until 2029, it is now forecasted at $56.1 billion of investments across 46 mining projects. Investments were readjusted in some instances due to COVID and went down $1.6 billion between 2019 and 2020, according to the Ministry of Energy and Mines. Pre-pandemic, 2020 investments were projected to be at $6.3 billion, but closed at $4.3 billion. Therefore, for 2021, original forecast of $6.5 billion is now set at $3.5 billion. Canada represents Peru's third largest investor, capturing approximately 17% of the portfolio. 7 projects are earmarked for 2021, starting with Jujin Extension, also known as the Marcona Tailings, is a $140 million iron ore project operated by Jujin and is in detailed engineering stage. Operations should begin in 2022. Chalcobamba Phase 1 is a $130 million copper project in the feasibility stage operated by Las Bambas, MMG, and operations should start in 2022. As for Corani, it's a $586 million silver project run by Bear Creek Mining, Canadian. It is in the detailed engineering stage and operations should start up as planned for 2024. Immaculada Optimization is a $136 million gold project operated by Hochschild and is in the feasibility stage. Operations will start next year. Pampacancha is a $70 million copper project in the feasibility stage operated by Hudbay Minerals, Canadian as well. Pampacancha is a pit of the Constancia mine and operations are planned to start in 2022. San Gabriel is a $431 million gold project owned by Buenaventura and is in feasibility stage and expected to start operations in 2023. Yanacocha Sulfides, also Sulfuros, is a $2.1 billion copper gold project and is owned by Yanacocha, a joint venture by Newmont, Buenaventura, and Sumitomo, and is in the detailed engineering stage and should begin operations in 2024. Looking at 4 years out from 2022 to 2025, we're looking at 6 more projects. There's Magistral, which is a $490 million copper project in the feasibility stage and operated by Nexet Resources, and operations are expected to start in 2025. Rio Seco is a $350 million copper refinery owned by Buenaventura. It is in the feasibility stage and construction is due to finish in 2024. Zafranal is a joint venture between Canada's Teck Resources, which owns 80%, and Mitsubishi Materials. It's a $1.26 billion US project, open pit and underground copper gold project in the feasibility stage. Startup was scheduled for 2023, but the company now aims to start construction by the end of 2022, so operations should start in 2025. Las Chancas is owned by Southern Copper, and it's a $2.6 billion open pit copper project in the pre-feasibility stage. Construction is due to finish in 2027. As for Trapiche, it's operated by El Molle Verde and a $473 million open pit copper project in the pre-feasibility stage, and construction will finish in 2026. Lastly, Michiquillay, which is a $2.5 billion open pit copper project operated by Southern Copper. It's in the pre-feasibility stage and construction will take 3 years. Potential abounds, but important to note that uncertainty surrounding the upcoming national elections in April is a deterrent to potential investors. It usually generates social conflict and incites anti-extractive sentiments. It's an already fragile socio-political environment afflicted by mining conflicts, and it was worsened due to the dire pandemic effects in remote communities and diminishing royalties. And a prolonged second wave of the pandemic could potentially strike the mining sector again. But mining, time and time again, has demonstrated great resilience and always bounces back. Aside from the nuts and bolts mining, I believe that Canada also has a great potential to become a steward of innovative practices, clean environmental solutions, social remedies, both participatory and inclusive, to jumpstart mining sustainably and demystify dirty mining. 4.0 mining such as automation, digitization, AI, green mining, energy efficiency, water management, and cybersecurity are all top of mind. Some technologies are already being adopted by some companies, even pre-pandemic, but we have certainly seen an increased uptake in employing new applications. The time is ripe to implement more solutions. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you're interested to explore those opportunities. I'm happy to discuss and will be available for meetings during PDAC. If we do not meet up virtually during PDAC, please do not hesitate to contact me afterwards. Thank you. Merci.